Dante wrote, "The path to paradise begins in hell." Join Deacon Don Prendergast and David Fortin as they discuss the tools men need to build the domestic church and the spiritual weapons to defend it. This is Through the Fire.
Okay, Deacon, we're back.
We're back.
Hey, I'm just going to tell you something. Remember I went away and I did that talk for the Knights of Columbus?
Yeah.
Well,
yes.
I was there, and they had handed out these bags of coffee. But the coffee the coffee, I love coffee.
Me too.
The coffee, well, you're a police officer, of course.
Of course.
And
my wife gets so annoyed at me. My wife gets so annoyed at me because I can drink coffee all day and still go to sleep at night.
Yeah, well, that doesn't happen for me. But the coffee that was served there comes from a company called Christian Kitchens Coffee. And their website, their website is www.christiankitchenscoffee.com. Their moniker, their mantra is brew, pour, pray, and repeat. They're a Catholic-owned coffee company based out of Waterbury, Connecticut. The flavor that we tried the day that we were in New Haven at the Knights of Columbus Museum, now the Blessed McGivney Pilgrimage Center, was called the Brass City Blend. And that's where
I'm going on the website. I'm looking at these. That's
where Father McGivney was from, and that particular blend actually has on the bag the Blessed McGivney prayer. So
nice, that's great.
I mean, they've got so many different blends of coffee.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Courage, justice, patience, faith. They've got a blend that is called Blessed Mother.
I bet you that's really, really...
Oh, I got to try this. We got to talk to these guys. I got to try this. They have a blend called Humility. You know what? I've often said, guys, those of you that are listening, yes, we should pray for humility, but be careful.
Yeah.
Because God loves to fulfill that prayer. And when you're praying for humility, you know what's going to happen. You're going to get humiliated so that you can learn humility.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got to try this. Yeah, we got to see if we could reach out to these guys and let them know that what we got going on. This is fantastic.
Well, I just want them to know that their coffee was absolutely delicious, and I am a fan, and I will be ordering that and maybe other flavors as well. But
yeah. And for those that are listening, I'm looking at the website here, and they offer subscriptions. You can get bags or K-cups or whatever. So yeah, check that out. What is it?
ChristianKitchens.com.
ChristianKitchens.com.
Yep.
And get some delicious coffee. Fantastic.
Yep.
All
so
right.
I just wanted to give them a shout out because they actually sponsored the coffee for that day, and they just did a great job.
So this is a perfect example of what we're talking about with the Beatitudes of blessed are the poor in spirit.
Mm-hmm.
They can, there's plenty of companies out there who can just be greedy, capitalists, all about me. I'm sure all of us have had experiences where you try to return something, customer service, and it's just a horrible experience. Mm-hmm. Now, here we have a coffee company, a Catholic coffee company, and they're doing the right thing. They're supporting Knights of Columbus, and they're sharing the love. So that's fantastic. That's good to hear.
No, I just, like I said, man, I'm going to be ordering from them. That is my coffee of choice now.
Well, now I'm going to start ordering from them.
Yep. So, all right, my friend, let's continue our conversation with Blessed is the Poor in Spirit.
Yeah. So going back to what we were talking about, I had kind of touched on St. Jerome, who gives us the Bible commentary. I mean, St. Jerome, he dug through the entire Bible cover to cover, and he gave us the commentary that, he's another example of a theologian that we use today, him, Aquinas, and so many others. But one of the things that he talked about in regards to blessed are the poor in spirit is he says the renunciation of temporal things. And so that's what he's talking about. The blessed are the poor in spirit is when you are renouncing the primacy of temporal things, the acquisition of stuff. And he goes on to talk about how, some people are poor by necessity, he calls it, but there, obviously there are those in society who are living on the margins. There are those in the world, this is another thing that we just have to just accept. Even our poorest in the United States still ranks in the top 1% of wealth across the entire globe. And that's pretty wild if you think about that. Someone who would be experiencing poverty here in the United States are still doing a whole lot better than so many other people in other parts of the world. And so just simply being an American, just simply being a citizen of this great nation is cause for us to reflect upon how are we using our stewardship of the fact that we are citizens of the greatest nation on the face of the earth. You know, and some of our listeners, you guys might be traveling around the world or for business or for whatever reasons. I'm sure you've been in those moments where you are profoundly grateful for being an American. I mean, I can tell a story. My wife and I, we adopted 2 boys from a Russian orphanage. And this is back in, I want to say it was the year 2000, right around that time. And so we traveled to Russia, lived there for a month. And we were there in the wintertime. And somebody had asked, you know, hey, Deacon, you know, what was that like? And what did that look like? And I answered it by saying, gray. The weather was gray. The expression on so many people's faces was gray. The mood was gray. It was just existing, just surviving. And so my wife and I, we lived there for a month with a host family. After everything was said and done, and we went through court and we did battle in court, and you know, all kinds of crazy stuff happened while we were there, we finally get to the point where we're bringing our children home. But now there's a process. And so part of the process was, you know, the boys that we brought home, the boys that we adopted, they are Russian citizens, right? And so step one is they need visas. They need visas to enter the United States. And so there's a process, you know, health exam, want to make sure they're not carrying into the United States some horrible disease. And then the very, very end of the process, we had to go to the embassy in Moscow. You know, we had to pick up their visas. And I tell you, it was an amazing, amazing, amazing experience. Because as we're approaching the embassy, we were instructed by our host family, and he says to us, you know, when the car stops, we're going to open the door, and I want you to take your passports and hold them high up into the air. And so we're approaching the embassy, and we see crowds of people around the embassy, like circling the block. We found out later on that occasionally the United States would offer a lottery opportunity for people to receive travel visas, you know, for the United States. And so people would have to stand in line, and they would enter a lottery system to get one of these travel visas. Anyway, crowds of people. And so from a distance, as we're heading down the block, we can begin to see the American flag flying high above the embassy. And as we're getting closer and closer, the emotions, the patriotism is just swelling up within us like a volcano. I mean, it brought my wife and I to tears. So here we have, my wife and I are in the car, and we got our 2 boys with us. And we finally, you know, we're passing by all the crowds, and we see the American flag off in the distance. We finally get to where the entrance gate is. And so the car stops. The door, you know, we open the doors, or I don't even remember the moment. Did somebody open my door? Did I open my door? Did our driver come around and open the door for us? I don't even remember. The doors opened. The doors opened, and we stepped out. My wife and I stepped out. We held our American passports high up in the air, and 2 Marines dressed in dress uniform, 2 American Marines dressed in full uniform. They push their way through the crowd, grab hold of my wife and I, and drag us through the crowd right into the gates of the embassy. The most incredible experience I have ever had in a foreign land. And it was amazing. We enter the gates, and now that we're inside the embassy gates, the crowd is behind us. The noise of the crowd is starting to dwindle into the background and dissipate from my recognition. And what starts to lift up more and more as we make our way across the courtyard is we start hearing American English voices. And now that sound is rising up. And again, I tell you, it brought us to tears. The recognition of how amazing the United States is, how much of a gift, the wealth we possess simply by being Americans. You will only understand this if you have the experience of going to a foreign country, especially if it's a foreign country where its populace is under, let's say, a bit of duress. You will only understand it if you have that to compare it to. And so the humility that I came home, when I came home and I had my boys, and even that process, speaking to the various individuals who were helping us, who were Russian citizens, and helping us with our adoption process. I remember my wife tells this story all the time, where the individuals helping us, they would just say over and over again, lucky boys, lucky boys. And it's true. It's true. My sons who I love dearly, and interestingly enough, both of them in their adulthood have served, and one of my sons continues to serve in the U.S. military. And it's just, what a gift, what an absolute gift. And the humility that I've experienced and that I understand, the poor in spirit, understanding the wealth that is just simply to live in such a country, regardless of the political problems, the economic problems. Man, it's nothing compared to the hardships that so many other people experience around the world. But yet we have to be aware that we are tempted with putting aside the natural gifts that so many of us, all of us here in the United States have simply by being Americans, and how trivial we may find ourselves complaining about things that genuinely do not matter. My phone is not working. My widescreen TV, the picture is a little fuzzy and I can't see the game as crystal clear as I would like. How many of us remember? I'm the youngest of 3 boys in my growing up in my house. My job was to be my dad's remote control. My position took my pillow from my bed and I planted on the floor in front of the TV. My job was to be my dad's remote control. We have to remind ourselves that, these temporal things that St. Jerome talks about, man, this stuff doesn't matter. So much of it is just a distraction.
Deacon, it sounds like gratitude is a real important part of separating yourselves and distancing yourself from believing these possessions are yours. Gratitude really gives you a sense of stewardship.
Well, this is you absolutely need to be grateful for what you have. But let's not forget, when we're talking about worshiping God, when we're talking about, properly oriented worship, we really do need to approach God with our hands empty. There is absolutely nothing any of us can do, and there is absolutely nothing any of us can offer beyond our heart that God needs. God doesn't need anything. God needs us to love him because he loves us so much. And so blessed are the poor in spirit, and this is why it's also important when we worship, and we need to be aware of this. I genuinely love our Protestant brothers and sisters, and especially the glory and praise music that they offer the faithful, but let's not lose sight of the fact that, stages are for entertainment, altars are for worship. And so when we come before God, we should have open hands and emptiness of soul and just give everything, leave it all there, and beg for God, for the Holy Spirit to come and enter our lives and transform us. The music that we hear, it's beautiful music and it moves, but genuine worship places Jesus at the center. And we approach him as paupers. We approach him as beggars, because there is nothing that we have that he needs. Everything that he has, we need. Everything. St. Jerome goes on to say, the mind is drawn from spiritual things by riches. And this is such an important thing to think about also. So often when individuals are wealthy and doing well, when life looks like, hey man, everything is working out for me, it's sad, but so many people fall away from practicing the faith. I got it all going on. And then you run the risk of starting to have this Luciferian attitude that, well, I am God. Hey, man, look, it's all me. Look at me. Look at me. And that's a very, very dangerous place to be, because it's not you. It's not you. Every single heartbeat that you have, every heartbeat is because God ordains it so. And so it's not you, and we have to be very, very careful about that. Wealth does not replace God. And this is why the prosperity gospel is so problematic, because it equates wealth with relationship. Hey, look at how wealthy I am, and I need more of it so that I could then, spread the gospel and whatnot. And I know what some of you might be thinking, hey, Deacon, take a look at the Vatican. There's tons of wealth there. And it's true. It's true. The Vatican does have wealth, but a lot of what the Vatican possesses, it's like a museum. And it's a 2,000-year-old museum. And, first of all, if you have the means to build a church, to build a temple for God, to worship, to give him the best, and to have people that enter into that construction project and offer their best, well, you end up with St. Peter's Basilica and so many of the other basilicas in Rome and around the world. St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, where I was ordained. You end up with that because people want to give God the absolute best. But also, let's not forget that one of the things that is not shouted from the rooftop, but is true, is the Catholic Church is also responsible for the largest and oldest charitable outreach in human history, which is Catholic Charities, and the efforts of the Catholic Church, even before the official establishment of Catholic Charities, because you've got parishes all over the world, and you have faith communities who are offering financial support, material support, prayerful support for individuals all over the world.
There is scriptural references to what you're saying, too, because before Jesus was going to be crucified, someone came in and anointed his feet and washed. Oh,
yeah.
Right? And there was the oil that he was...
Right, and Judas got all annoyed with that. Yeah. There was a woman, let's call her a woman of ill repute. Some say it was Mary of Magdala, but we don't know that for certain. And she came with a very, very expensive bottle of perfume, and she broke it open and poured it and anointed Jesus's feet. And Judas was all ticked off with that. It's like, oh, we could have sold that for however many days' wages and give the money to the poor. But that is a beautiful expression of how, if an individual has within their means to offer something to God, let the person do that. The question then becomes is, what do you do with that offering? And this is the dilemma, if you will. Maybe it's not a dilemma, but this is the question that goes circling round and round. The Vatican has received all this treasure, let's call it. Why don't they just sell it and give the money to the poor? Well, let's look at it this way. How many of us really believe that re-gifting is a good thing? I mean, really, really. A lot of us do it. Somebody gives you a gift and you look at the gift, it's like, yeah, that's going on the shelf and I'll end up throwing that into some grab bag in the office the next go around. But if somebody is going to give you something that comes from the heart, something that really, really is powerful, yeah, I don't think re-gifting, especially if it's a precious gift that's given to the church, I don't think re-gifting or selling the stuff is a good idea. So what happens? 2,000 years later, you become the steward of all of this treasure, and the treasure is never going anywhere. It's not. It's never going to go anywhere, because if the church was to sell it, what does that say about the person or the family or whatever the institution that gave it? It's like, well, this no longer has meaning for us. So yeah, I don't see that. So getting back to
our mutual friend Pat King actually visited the Vatican. And he took the tour of the Vatican Museum, and a lot of the stuff that is there, the Vatican doesn't own. It's just a steward of it. It holds it in protection to protect it, and it's so much better over the 2,000 years that they've had this stuff there. that they can run tours and make money that they can give to.
Right. And that's the whole other thing. Exactly right. And there's a whole nother element of, let's not forget the university system for education began with the Catholic Church and the monasteries. The maintaining of history is because of the Catholic Church and the monasteries, which monasteries were basically these fortresses with high walls that safeguarded, the treasures of the church from age to age to age. Again, the whole attitude of the church, and we should think about this also, the whole attitude of the church is the head of the church is not the Pope. Okay, we have to get that clear. The head of the church is not the Pope. The head of the church is not the cardinals. The head of the church is not the bishops. I gave a homily a while ago, and I said to the people in the pews, to the parishioners, I said, whose church is this? A couple of people said, oh, it's our church. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not your church. It's not my church. I pointed, my pastor was sitting right up there in his chair. I said, it's not his church. It's not the bishop's church. This church belongs to Jesus. Everything is his. All we are is stewards of what's his. I have no authority to take what belongs to Jesus and make this decision that, you know what, we don't need these gold chalices that came from, the 5th century, or this painting or this statue of Michelangelo. None of us were there. We have no idea the outpouring of love that Michelangelo put into the Sistine Chapel, laying on his back, painting the ceiling. So the idea of this is, to be poor in spirit is to recognize that whatever I possess is not for me. Whatever I possess belongs to God. It belongs to Jesus. And I'm going to use to help build up the kingdom, not to build up my ego or my status. Dave, I want to read from the catechism here. So I'm going to read from number 1718, the desire for happiness. And this is actually, let me start here. The Beatitudes respond to the natural desire for happiness. This desire is of divine origin. God has placed in the human heart in order to draw man to the one who alone can fulfill it. And this is the problem with the world today. You think you're going to find happiness because you get the latest and best whatever. But it's not going to happen. And then so St. Augustine also says, how is it then that I seek you, Lord? Since in seeking you, my God, I seek a happy life. Let me seek you so that my soul may live. For my body draws life from my soul, and my soul draws life from you. And then Thomas Aquinas goes on to say, God alone satisfies. And this is the problem. We think we're going to find happiness with the riches of this world, and it never will satisfy. Enough will never be enough. And so really this whole idea of this beatitude of blessed are the poor in spirit is to have a change of orientation, just to change the thinking. And even if we take a look at the Psalms, right? So this is not a new idea. We take a look at the Psalms and we find in Psalm 62, trust in God alone. In verse 11, we read, do not trust in extortion, in plunder, put no empty hope through wealth. Though wealth increase, do not set your heart upon it. And that brings up a whole nother thing. We are going to see people, and this is the trap. We're going to see people around us that are doing very well financially. And we're going to see them, and we're going to be looking at what we have. And I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, it's the devil getting inside your head, putting you in these thoughts of drawing comparisons between what they have and what you have. Do you really need all the junk that's being thrown at you? Do you really need that? Is that really what's going to bring happiness? You know, in my position as deacon, as a chaplain of a motorcycle club, I mean, I'm around people who are suffering really bad. Is another party going to make a difference? Another round of shots, hey, let's toast. Is that really going to bring the hope? Or is it just a temporary fix? There's really only one thing that's going to satisfy, and that's a genuine relationship with our Lord Jesus. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Those of you that understand this, those of you that recognize that the poor in spirit is the lifestyle that exists in the kingdom of heaven. If you understand that, then you're doing pretty darn good. If you really get it, then, you're going to be good, because you're going to start putting your priorities in order and realize that, we don't need the latest and greatest. We don't have to live in a 5,000 square foot house. We don't have to. We don't have to send our kids to Ivy League schools and put ourselves in so much debt that we are just not able to spend any time with our children because we're working like dogs to pay off a student loan bill that never needed to be. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Don't think for a second that getting another package on your doorstep from your favorite online store is going to bring happiness, because it's not. It's not. But Jesus will, understanding our eternal destiny and living a life in pursuit of it. That's going to make the difference. And sharing that knowledge with other people who you care about. Wasting time with Jesus and wasting time with people whom you love is the best time spent.
One of the things that stood out with me when I went to St. Mary's Church in New Haven, Connecticut, where the Knights of Columbus was found, there was a poor box, and it said, "Remember the poor."
There you go.
Remember the poor. And I'll tell you what, if the package that you do get at your doorstep is Christian Kitchen's coffee, you will not be disappointed. Remember, brew, pour, pray, and repeat. Hey, and friends, don't forget to check us out at www.castingthe.net, where you can find all our shows from the past and some stuff about us going forward in the future. So for Deacon Don Prendergast, I'm David Fortin. We're going to leave it right there for this week. We'll see you next week when we talk about another one of the Beatitudes. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was a Spirit of Truth Radio Arts original program for CastingThe.net.